I see that Lauren's joined. Added you, Lauren, as a moderator. I don't know if that means a co-host here. Can you? It sent you a request. Okay, there it is. Sorry, guys. All right. So, Tom, I don't know if you can join also on Instagram Live, but you may hear a third voice here of Tom talking. No. Okay, because you're from your phone. And I see Lauren. Okay. All right. So, yeah. We're trying something new, guys, on Instagram, but also thanks for tuning in. If you're listening on any of the other platforms, we're live on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, across Lauren at Adulting Azizi's channel, and Tom Brickman at The Frugal Gay 11, and I'm Alan Corey at Real Estate Maxi. Today's conversation is short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. What should you invest in, and why? The pros and cons. And I think we all own long-term rentals and short-term rentals. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. What do you have, Alan? I forget.
I've got 2 short-term rentals, and most of the rest are long-term rentals, which my own personal holdings are closer to 18 units, but then I've got another 350 through syndicates and stuff. Those are all long-term as well.
Right. Okay. And Tom, you have 1 short-term rental.
I do, and I'm sitting in it right now.
We can't hear you, Tom. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, what about now?
Okay, I can hear you now. It was my phone. I apologize.
Okay, so I'm sitting in my short-term rental right now. We're actually, it's being worked on, and been here getting it all ready to go.
Okay, real quick, technical support. Lauren, I don't know if anyone on Instagram is going to be able to hear Tom, because Tom's is not logged into Instagram.
I know. Maybe we should just not do the Instagram today.
Okay, guys. Yeah, let's do that just because of some technical difficulties. Join us over on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, either at Adulting Azizi or at Real Estate Maxi, and or at The Frugal Gay 11, and I'll log off on Instagram, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Sorry to make this difficult, guys.
That was our first time trying it, so it all worked out. But let's get into it. Okay, yeah. So, Tom, what's your short-term rental, long-term rental breakdown?
So it's 22 long-term, 1 short-term currently, and then I have another long-term coming into play in the next week or so. So I'm very heavy on the long-term side, just because that's where I started and that's where my comfort is. And the short-term will probably get a second one here in the next year, but I am doing it slowly.
Hello, Kappa.
Alan, I can't hear you. Is it me?
I lost Alan also.
Okay, there we go.
I said hello, Kappa, and thanks for tuning in. Let us know if you have any real estate questions. Also, Kappa is my son, so thanks for tuning in and supporting me. And aloha from Hawaii, Mark, a firefighter, real estate investor out in Hawaii, who's doing great stuff, and you should give him a follow. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Sorry, yeah, Lauren, I think you were going to talk about your mix.
Yeah, so we have, including our primary residence, we have 14 doors. So that means 13 rentals, 3 are long-term, and we're working on our 10th short-term right
now. Cool. I gotta you guys talk for a second. Oh, never mind. My car is getting towed, and the tow truck driver keeps calling me, but because I have a flat tire. All right. I'm so distracted right now. This is the timing of the perfect storm of a bunch of things happening. But
yeah.
Okay, so we all like short-term rental. We all like long-term rental. We all started in long-term rentals, and then we've pivoted to short-term rentals. So there's some overlap there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone here feel strongly like one is superior?
I mean, for me, the short-term rentals are obviously, or else I wouldn't have the 10-3 mix that I do. The reason is because of what I've done in the background and the systems that I've created. So I use a property management software. The cleaners can schedule themselves. The communications are very automated. I can take security deposits, renters agreements. The locks set themselves. We have QuickBooks, which integrates into that, and then we are able to hire a bookkeeper as well to handle kind of the monthly books. So because of all of that on the short-term rental side, it's just much more, it's actually easier for me. And at this point, we've set up, literally 10 of these things. So we can do it. I mean, we can create a short-term rental in a week, everything from furniture to putting in all of the different electronics, right? The locks, the thermostat, the mesh Wi-Fi, all of those things, kitchens, stock, everything. We can do all of that in basically a week, max like 2 weeks at this point, if we don't need any big renos and stuff. So just because the way that we've set ourselves up, short-term rentals are literally just easier for me than long-term rentals. I'm just not systematized with it at all. And I don't like, there's not in some ways there's more upfront work for short-term rentals, but you don't have to do with short-term rentals. You don't have to do anything upfront to get people in there. You literally list it and then it books and then people are there. You don't have to think about who these people are and find them and market to them and things like that.
So I feel the opposite way than Lauren. And it was funny because she was trying to do one as a long-term rental and she's asking me all these questions. I'm like, how do you not know this? I see from having my one short-term rental that people can be a lot more needy in the short-term rental category than the long-term rental category. So yes, there is a lot of upfront work getting it set up and getting a good tenant in place. But once you have a great property and a great tenant, which doesn't always happen, it's kind of, you're on autopilot. And I check in, we do our inspections, we make sure that the house is being taken care of. But I really like my long-term rentals. I know that I have less profit in them. I have one that's right by Cowboys Stadium that rents for what I rent it for a month, and it rents for that in a night when the Cowboys are playing. So I see that there's a ton of money to be made in that category. But I also, Lauren shares her troubled customers that are asking her a million things and arguing about this isn't this and how do I get in and it doesn't look good and I don't like this bedding, and I don't have to deal with any of that once I've handed them the keys. They can pick their own bedding. They can make it a house. Like I went over to a property that we just leased last week and they made it look really nice and they made it a home. And now that I've spent the money and everything's fixed in there, I got to make sure that the lawn gets done and the pest control gets done. But beyond that, I don't have to pay the utilities. I don't, all of that's on the tenant now. So there's pros and cons to every side. And that's one thing that people get caught up on is, and that's why Lauren has a mix and I have a mix. It makes sense on certain things, but on certain properties, I wouldn't want to have them as short-term. It just wouldn't make sense. So that's my stance on that.
Yeah, to me, it's investing always has risk and rewards, and typically the riskier it is, the more headaches there are, the more money you're going to make. And so that's why I like a mix as well. And what I mean by the risk and the headaches is short-term rental. They are passing regulation all the time in certain cities. Some have to be licensed, some they're just not letting you do it anymore. So there's some risk there. It's a lot more money up front to get started in short-term rentals because you have to furnish the property. It usually has to be a higher tier as well. So that's obviously more risk because you've got to put more money out. But yeah, you make more money in a short-term rental than you do in a long-term rental. And it's more headache because you're managing tenants day to day or week to week rather than year to year like you would on a lease. We got some questions about where our short-term and long-term rentals are located. YouTube viewer Lockhart Graham wants to know that for us. So for me, my short-terms and long-terms are in Atlanta, and I do have an additional long-term rentals in Huntsville, Alabama. You guys want to talk about where yours are located?
Absolutely. So my one short-term is in Toledo, Ohio. I have 13 other doors in Toledo, and I have 8 long-term rentals in Dallas, and likely one of those would be the second one. So I do one in each market. So I have a Toledo property and a Dallas property as a short-term.
Mine are all on the west coast of Florida, and my short-term rentals and long-term rentals, for the most part, are like actually mixed within the same properties.
So then you have a multi-unit family, and some are long-term. I've got the same. So I've got like a triplex where one tenant is long-term and two are short-term, and I like that mix just because it balances the headaches, it balances the income and the risk, and it's much easier to pivot from a short-term rental to a long-term rental. Um, as long as the numbers work, that's easier. I found. Do you guys disagree to that?
I've only flipped the other way, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, we've got another question on YouTube from Kappa. What is a comfortable amount of short terms and long terms to have? That's a difficult question to answer. I think it's based on your rental portfolio profile, your risk profile, maybe where your properties are located. Is there a
Location.
short-term rental market? Is there a long-term rental market? We've talked about this before, I think last week, Lauren, which I sort of like your strategy that not the hotbed vacation destinations as maybe to start your short term because you have so much competition there and you're going against big money, big institutions. And if you're sort of in the tertiary, maybe an hour or two from those big locations, you still have visitors and fewer competitors, and you can make good money. And properties are going to be cheaper to purchase that way. Long-term rentals, what are your thoughts on sort of location? Is there a certain line in the sand you would draw there as well?
Tom, it's long term, so you should answer.
I mean, my strategy's always been, Dallas has had tremendous growth. It's super competitive to get into. It's super, the prices keep going up. There's a lot of appreciation there, which means there's not that much cash flow with that because you're paying a lot more for that single family house or whatever you're buying. And then I look at, I'm in Toledo, even though it has had a small decline in population for the past 50 years. It does have growth where the city's still investing into it. It does have a college located here. So I've got a couple right next to the university, has a big hospital hub. So my short-term rental was rented by a couple of nurses for a while. So where does it make sense? And, I can get into a single family house for $100,000 here in Toledo or less. And, a single family similar house in Dallas is going to be 300,000. So I always look at all of that, and I want the exposure in both markets because I get the cash flow out of Toledo and I get the appreciation out of Dallas.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the boat. Like, say you have a $300,000 budget, I would almost always want to buy three $100,000 houses more than one $300,000 house. Where do you guys stand on that?
I've just invested pretty much locally. I mean, my 6-unit apartment building is 2.5 hours north of me, but all of my rentals are on the west coast of Florida. And I like them being at least somewhat nearby, not having to get on a plane and go see them. And so for that reason, have felt like I am sort of, it just is what it is in my local market. I am going to take a peek at Toledo, Ohio later this year, go see Tom and look at stuff up there to get just that cash flow, long-term rental, kind of lower maintenance type thing than the STRs are down here. But I just, because I'm local, if I've got $400,000, then I'm buying, $400,000 place. Like if I have, say, like this place I just bought that I'm sitting in now, it was $450,000. We have put 25% down. So I could have bought, multiple properties, probably with a little bit down, multiple $100,000 properties, but instead I bought one $450,000 one because it's around the corner from my other house. And it's really important in real estate, but especially short-term rentals, to keep building in the area that you're in rather than building a whole new team, especially the cleaners in a different area. And so for that reason, I'm a little strapped. I like investing where I am.
We got a Hello Winners shout out from the Stay Winning podcast from YouTube.
Hey,
hello,
Hugo.
back to you.
Hey, Hugo.
Hey. Thanks for tuning in. I wanted to piggyback off what you were saying in that sort of keeping things congregated, I guess, concentrated, so that you can leverage the teams. You have the same cleaners if it's short-term rental. You've got the same property manager or the same handyman or the same plumber. To me, that sort of leverage of this one person that can handle multiple properties goes much further in leveraging those relationships than trying to invest spread out in a bunch of different markets.
I completely agree. That's why I stick in the 2 markets that I'm in, because I have solid teams in both. And whenever I get pitched these other towns or these other cities, I tried in Cleveland and I lost a lot of money when I went to Cleveland, Ohio. And I just, if you don't have a team and you don't, I agree with that. And I started in Toledo while I was in college, and I moved over to Dallas when I moved there for work. And it just, I bought in the markets that I was in. And obviously I haven't been in Toledo for many years now, but it's still a great market that makes sense. And that first one that I bought when I was 21, I still own, and it still cash flows. And it's still, I went over and did yard work and yelled at the tenants for the dog crap all over the yard the other day. So, I mean, I stick with where my team's built up. And a lot of people always say, well, what if I don't have a team? Well, start building the team before you need it. And that's an answer that I give to a lot of people. If you know that you want to go into this market, do some homework on it before you jump in and you end up in a situation where you're just losing money every month. And I see it. People come to me or come to you, Alan, or come to Lauren. And that's a reoccurring thing where people jump in, they don't do the homework. They don't, know the logistics of neighborhoods or the county laws or the city laws. And it just ends up an expensive mess. And that's huge getting into this.
And Tom, haven't you at some points used some of your Texas team in Ohio?
Yes. So I've taken on huge, gigantic projects, and when they stalled, and I did have an electrician on Ohio property do half the work and then ask for the second draw and then just completely ghost me. And at that point, I'm like, I'd rather spend money and send my team up there to do it right from Texas than have someone else ghost me with, another $3,500. So from that aspect, I have sent them a few times when it made sense, when it was stuff that they were strong in too. I have much stronger people in Ohio for certain things than I do in Texas. So when it makes sense, I will definitely say, hey, ready for that Ohio trip. And I always try and plan those in the summer when it's unbearable in Texas, so it's an easier sell.
Yeah, that's true. We brought the guy who does our surveillance system. So every time we buy a new property, because we're doing short-term rentals, we put in a new surveillance system. So he went up the 2.5 hours to our 6-unit apartment building. Our painter went, our handyman, we've taken people. That's a pretty serious drive for people, and they end up staying overnight and things. And so it's interesting. You kind of can build your team in certain areas, and then if you need them to go to another area here and there, they will do that for you.
I think Alan's been towed away with his car at this point, and that's okay too. We'll just carry on without him.
His car is getting towed. He said that so nonchalantly. My car doesn't need towed when I had a flat tire. I can just put a new tire on it. I don't know what kind of car he's got.
No idea.
So what about short-term rentals, Tom? Like short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. You're 20-something long-term, one short-term. Are your plans to do more short-term, or are you just going to stick with the one for now?
Everything's changing in Dallas right now. I think they're voting this week on what they're doing with short-term rentals and what restrictions are. So that was my slowdown there with Dallas, was I don't want to jump into it, spend $20,000 furnishing it and getting it ready, and then be like, well, we're not going to do, and that's what a lot of the hesitation there has been. And I just don't want to jump in and spend $20,000 extra and then scramble to try and get it emptied and rented as a long-term if something does change and they shift how they're allowing it. Because that happened in Fort Worth. They have lots of restrictions, which is right next to Dallas. And I know that you've seen it in Florida as well, but it flip-flops and you don't want to spend that money. And
yeah, in St. Pete right now, St. Pete, Florida, people are complaining oh, I can't do it in St. Pete anymore. And I kind of am like, guys, you never could. I'm sorry. There was no change in regulation. You were just doing it illegally and they cracked down. But I saw that in Dallas today because I'm in some Facebook groups and somebody was selling all of their furniture in Dallas. And but they hadn't voted yet, which I thought was weird. They're just assuming it's going to go a certain way, I guess.
Right.
Hang on.
Alan, how's the car?
Nope.
Can't hear you.
Here's a question from Hugo, Tom. How's Frisco short term? That's right there, right?
Frisco on short-term rentals. Now, Frisco as a city is super hard to work with. I used to work in Frisco, so the health department, the housing, everything is really difficult for things that I can get done super easy in Dallas. There's tons of growth out there. However, I've made it a hard rule that I don't go up into Collin County just because of the difficulties that I had working with them for the years that I did. Do I think that I'm missing the boat by staying away from there? Absolutely not. I know that there's a Disney going up there in Collin County. I know that there's a Universal Studios broke ground. So I know that there's tons of growth and tons of opportunity. However, if I'm going to invest up there, I'm going to go up towards where Disney is in Anna or in one of those, and stay away from Frisco just from my experience. And when I was there, that was always the case. Was I'd have problems in Frisco and they'd be like, well, if you were in Anna, this is what it is. Alan, you're back with us?
Sorry, guys. Yes. This has been my Tesla was in the shop. My Tesla Model X, to answer your question, was in the shop since January. I dented the door, or the door got dented, I should say. And then when it was in the shop, the people fixing it in the Tesla collision broke the front door, and then they had to order a front door. And so it's been in the shop for 2.5 months. I picked it up yesterday, driving back from the Tesla Center. I popped the tire. I hit a curb and busted the tire, and now I'm spending all day trying to get it towed back there to get a new tire on. So that's been and of course they finally get back to me when I'm doing a live stream. So that's my day as a real estate investor.
The other day I was doing a live stream, and like I told my husband, like I'm doing a live stream. I did it with Decade Investor. I'm like, it's at 10 a.m. doing a live stream. And at 10 o'clock on the dot, he's like, the electrician's here. What do we want him to do? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What I told, and I thought we had a list. Like, why do I have to go over everything that the electrician has to do? Because we're living in a construction zone. So when we bought this place, it's the bottom half of a duplex. There's a duplex upstairs, duplex downstairs. We were going to LTR the top. It said we're going to STR the top. So we're working on that. But we're also thinking of this place as a future STR. And so that's how we just think of every property. Once we move in, it's already furnished. We move out, we'll leave it, we'll STR it if we can. But I'm now living in a construction zone. So I'm covered in construction dust and whatever. But my future guests in a few years are really going to like this place because everything we're doing now.
Well, I sort of like that's the benefit for short-term rentals. You put it in money to make it a little higher scale. And then if you do want to sell, you're obviously going to get a higher dollar point, value. So you're probably going to sell it to someone who's going to use it as a primary residence. And that's always their primary residence buyers are always going to pay more than an investor would for a property. So I think that is a pro for short-term rentals for sure, that any money you get out, I think you will get in return on the sale. And it's probably you mentioned this last week, it's a higher quality tenant because they get reviewed and they're going to take better care of the property, or they're not even there. They're just there to sleep because they're in town for a reason, or they're doing touristy things. So I think, better care of your property. So if that's,
I know, well, I'm pro STR for all of those reasons. I had a duplex in a pretty bad area of St. Pete, and I just wasn't proud of it. It was like, oh, where's your property? It's like, oh, it's over there. And they're like, oh, really? Okay, what are you, a slumlord? Which I hate when people say that. But and it was brown, but there was no reason to paint it. There was no reason to landscape. There was no return on that. It would have been putting money in to get no additional rent back. Versus I 1031 exchange that into this 6-unit apartment building. And there's all the incentive in the world to make the units beautiful, make the outside beautiful. We haven't redone the yard yet because our long-term tenants are kind of where the yard is. But once they leave and we short-term rent those units, I'll get to make the yard beautiful. And yeah, you get to touch things up. I have a lot more pride in the short-term rentals because I feel like I am more rewarded for keeping them nice than I was when I had long-term rentals. And there's all the other stuff too, like owner use. I kind of like where my properties are. The one, especially the apartment building north, it's in the same, county as my grandma. And so I can go stay there, have internet because her internet's terrible at her house. Go see her, and so there's the personal use, there's the pride of ownership, there's the fact that it's getting cleaned professionally multiple times per week, or at least multiple times per month. Can you tell me how many times your tenants are professionally cleaning their units? So there's a lot more eyes on it. It seems like in a lot of ways it's more taken care of. For all of those reasons, it works better for me. And it's like there's a lot of levers you can pull from a business perspective. All right, let me tweak this and see if I stop getting this question from people. Let me tweak this and see if we get more bookings. Let me change this picture and see if things happen. Whereas with long-term rentals, I just didn't feel like there was as much like tinkering I could do and changing of the business and being actively involved. So for all of those reasons, I like short term. I mean, the only plus side I really see with long term is, yeah, it's a little less work, but
And the property management expenses I want to talk about because this might catch some people off guard. Long-term rental property managers, they'll take anywhere between 6.5% to 10% has been my experience. And short-term rental, I've seen, those property managers, because it's more work, they're running a hotel between
Yeah.
20% to 40%
right.
of
On
their
that, what I
income.
will say is when it's 40, they're normally paying for cleaning out of that.
Yeah.
Just as an FYI. And with 20, they're not. But
Yeah, yeah. And so it's that's definitely a con. You make more money. You will still probably make more money with short-term rental and a higher property management fee, but just know that that's out there for sure.
that's why I self-manage
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. And you do a good job of educating on that. I think this is a good question. If we kind of turn this into short-term rental for long-term rental from Lockhart Graham on YouTube. So if you guys have questions, please go to YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn and join this live stream and ask your question from the three of us. What are the best loans to obtain for a first-time investor in the 2023 market? So I'd like to answer this like, what are the best loans to obtain for a first-time investor for long-term rental and short-term rental? Tom, what do you want to kick that one off?
So yeah, it can go a lot of different ways, but if we're doing just to obtain a first-time investor in 2023, I'm going conventional with 25% down, or I'm going conventional house hacking with 5 to 10% down. If it's a duplex or something like that, because that's going to get your foot in the door quicker. So conventional is what I lean into on either case. It just depends on the down payment where you're comfortable. What about you guys?
For me, yeah. If I'm a first-time investor, I want to do a house hack. So primary residence loan with FHA, 3.5% down. If you're a VA or willing to live in a rural area and use a USDA loan, those are 0% down. Those are huge. And what I mean by house hack, buy a house, multifamily preferred, and rent out those other units. That's how all three of us got started in real estate. And it all changed our trajectory and changed our life. So as a first-time investor, do that if you can. For the short-term rental, it's a little bit more difficult to get financing. You may have to get a second home loan, and there's going to be some parameters around that. You're going to have to live in it for stay in it for a certain amount of time, and have limitations on how long you can rent it, at least for the first year of that loan. Or what I would do is buy a primary and then move out of it, and then you turn your old primary into a short-term rental. That way you can acquire it with a cheaper loan and a lower down payment, because otherwise you're going to be looking at a commercial loan or a hard money loan, and typically they're going to want to put 15 to 25% down payment, and interest rates are going to be a little bit higher as a first-time investor. So I love kind of weaseling in through a primary loans that are cheaper and lower down payment, and then leave this breadcrumb trail of either long-term rentals or short-term rentals behind you, and move and acquire a new primary every single year. Lauren?
Yeah, definitely. You can house hack an STR as well, like we're doing. Primary residence loan. We're living down here. We're going to STR at the top. That's the best thing that you can do is house hack. And I was just thinking there should be a term for whatever hack this is, where you live in a primary, move out, live in a primary, move out, live in a primary, and never sell the other primaries and rent all of those out. Because that's a great way to keep those low down payments. And then you don't change. What a lot of people I think don't understand is your mortgage doesn't change. When you initially get a property, whatever the initial use is going to be, whether it's a primary or whether it's an investment property, that's the loan you're going to get. And then if you change the use of the property, if you move in to an investment, I guess you could refi into a primary loan. But if you leave a primary home and then rent that out, you get to keep that. So I would definitely go the route of conventional, or if you want to do FHA, you can do that too. I would definitely do that route first and do it until you can't anymore. Do it until you don't get approved.
Now, this is an interesting question. What is an example of short-term, long-term goals from Kappa from YouTube? When you mean short-term goals, do you have different goals, whether you're buying? Well, let me answer this, how I would answer this, and then I want to see if you guys are different. Short-term rentals, I think my primary goal, short-term goal, is to get it online, available to book as soon as possible. That seems to be the most primary goal. Long-term rental, I think I have the same goals on that too. Try to get it booked as soon as possible, right? Like, are there different goals that you see short-term and long-term? I mean, obviously long-term for both of them is maximize income.
Well, long-term rentals, you want to make sure you're getting the right person in there. So if you have to wait a little longer, I mean, the wrong
that's fair.
tenant can really screw you. But to the other side of things, with a short-term rental, I mean, the wrong furnishings can screw you, right? The wrong pictures can screw you. So, there's a little bit, I guess, in both instances of making sure that you're not moving too quickly. I've made that mistake before where I've just moved too quickly, maybe bought the wrong thing or not decorated the right way. And then I've had to go back and make changes later just because it wasn't really great. But in terms of like short-term goals and long-term goals, with a long-term rental, you're not, in my opinion, especially in today's market, going to be cash flowing very much right away. It's that long-term rentals in some ways are a long-term play in the sense of rent goes up faster than your mortgage does, say, or, maybe someday you pay off your mortgage and then it starts to cash flow. With a short-term rental, you're cash flowing right away. So that's the reason I've done the short-term rentals is, I was 30 years old, had just gotten married, ran some numbers and realized my husband and I, even though we were six-figure earners, saving 25% of our income, that we were going to be able to retire at 55. And I thought, well, what kind of bullshit is that? Sorry. But I was like, that's crazy that you would think like in that situation, no kids, too high incomes, saving, that you're going to be able to do better than that. And our life changed when we started house hacking and when we got into short-term rentals, because we went from that with one house hack with short-term rentals in the back. We went from being able to retire at 55 to being able to retire like 40. We've added a few more and we hit FI at, 32 and 29. Like I was 32. So that's how much it changes things. And it's only cash flow, in my opinion, that can really do that for you. You can't retire on appreciation.
No, I agree. And that extra income gives you options. You could stay at your day job because we've all found ways to do this while we carried a day job. And that's what we all teach and educate. And yeah, Lauren, you're still in a day job. And so it's definitely possible and achievable. And we've all proven that. And then it gives you those options. And then for me, at least, I was like, I just want to do more real estate. And that became my job, but not out of necessity, because I enjoyed it and I loved it. I just couldn't get enough. Let's do another deal. Let's do another deal. Let's do another deal. And I think, Tom, you're in that same boat right now as well, right?
Tom, I think, has done as many deals since he left his job as he did before.
I have. I did 5 last year, and I'm working on number 3 right now in Toledo. So yeah, I've definitely, and I used to do 1 a year. Typically, some years I'd get ambitious and do 2 or 3, but doing 5 is a whole different pace last year, and it was just nonstop. And what's nice when you do it this way is you're like, oh, I have all this leftover tile. Guess where it's going? It's going into the next house. And that's just kind of, we're doing the one that we're working on now. I'm like, we need to go through everything we have and put it over there and see where we're at. Cause it's, you do have the extra stuff when you're setting it up and you don't want to keep buying and buying. And like, even today, I'm like, I know that we have buckets of ceiling paint somewhere. We need to go find them and we need to use those here before I go and buy another bucket of ceiling paint that's going to sit and not be used. So I have ramped it up, and I do, I'm doing the same thing that Alan did, where I enjoy it and I want to do more, and it's fun finding the deal. It's fun getting to the closing table and making money as you're closing, because you're buying it at the right price or the right neighborhood. And the one that I just bought is the ugliest house by far in the nicest neighborhood, and that's always my goal. Is I want to have that ugly house in the best neighborhood and not the nicest house in the worst neighborhood. So that's a big goal, and that house checked that box, and that's how we ended up with this house. And was it ideal timing? And did I want to do it right now? No, but it makes sense. So that's why I'm here and I'm doing it.
Yeah, Tom, it's so funny you mentioned paint. I've got our favorite color. You know the one. Just like buy the 5-gallon.
Agreeable gray. Agreeable gray.
I would never. I would never.
We're done with gray, Alan.
We're done with
No
gray.
more
Gray's out.
grays.
Gray's out.
Let's share. What's the new paint color?
It's called sea salt.
Sea salt.
Okay.
Tom
I
gave
use
me
the-
this. Yep.
I've been using that one for a while, and what's cool about it, it looks gray in some light, blue in some light, green in some light, and it's a real unique color. And I started using that in 2020. And I'm not using it here in this house. I'm in a historic house, so I stuck with the palette of the 57 colors that were from this time period. But it's my go-to, and it's because you literally can stand anywhere in the room and it looks a different color. And that's even when I show it, people are like, is it gray? Is it green? Is it blue? And that's just a nice conversation starter. And you don't see that everywhere. Usually it's straight agreeable gray like Alan's houses are.
Yeah. Well, we put antique white upstairs, which is on the warmer palette, not the cooler palette, because there was some Venetian plaster that we didn't want to clash with. But down here, this ugly room is, eventually this house is going to be sea salt too. So we stack the sea salt, and then, as Tom, you're talking about, like, you have all this tile and things like that. I end up with tons of like hair dryers, kitchen stuff, irons. My mom is like a thrifter. She goes to the thrift stores multiple times a week, and she's like, I bought you these mixing bowls, I bought you this pan, I bought you this pot, I bought this. And so there's just like a section of my shed that is all things that I will restock things with as they break or as we open new units. And so, like one of my units, the blow dryer disappeared, so I've got to go walk over there 1 block over and put a new one in there today. But it is like, and that's the thing too about like scaling too, is it just gets easier. And once I've been scaling as STRs, it's just, I didn't even have to buy any decorations this time. Actually, my mom was here while we were gone, and she put this picture up as like a joke. I don't know, but like they just keep showing up.
Yeah, I'm about to do that too. We're about to renovate our primary, and we're going to move into one long-term rentals. Tenants moving out. We're going to move in with our furniture and live there during the renovations, but then we're going to leave our furniture there and turn it into a short-term rental when we move out, and gives us opportunity to buy new furniture for where we're going to live in our primary. So try to make the most of it, and also live in the property, at least for short term, to understand what a tenant would experience and feel like. I wanted to go back to Lauren on your most recent short-term rentals. Did you use a specific short-term rental loan, or did you buy it through the primary because you're house hacking a multifamily?
This one, we got a primary loan. We did an adjustable rate mortgage through Raymond James. Raymond James is holding the loan. It's 4.875 interest rate adjustable. The 30-year fixed we were quoted was 7.125 at the time. And so we felt like we'll take the 4.875, and then
How many years is it, the ARM?
5.
Okay,
5 years.
that's solid.
So I was
Yeah.
like, in 5 years, it's going to go down. And the cool
Yeah.
thing is we bought it $100,000 under appraised value, and we will, because we bought it for 450, it appraised for actually 570. So we will be, as living here, then we can do, like, we're hoping to do, like, after we do the renovation stuff, maybe when we refi, rates go down, also do a cash out refi, and then take some cash later because, we are living here. The one before that, the 6 unit, we did seller financing, 5% 7-year balloon on that one.
Yeah, seller financing is a great way, whether it's a primary or short-term rental or long-term rental. And really, that's just finding the right seller at the right time. Typically a property that's difficult to sell or difficult to get appraised for. That's when you're going to have to get creative to buy it. And that's going to be the seller financing to get that done. All right, guys, as we wrap this up, anything else that we should cover? Short-term rental, long-term rental that's on your mind?
I wanted to answer Lockhart's question.
Okay.
Let's see. How much money did you have saved up before buying your first property, and how old were you? I had $13,000 that I had saved up by working in college, and I bought a $125,000 house. I put 5% down. Oh, I put 10% down. I borrowed 5% from my parents, so like $6,000. I paid them back like $400 a month until that was repaid. And I was 22.
I'll answer that one also. So I had nothing, but I had been buying Gap stock since I worked at the Gap. I made $8.50 an hour, and I cashed in all my Gap stock, and I had just about $10,000 worth of Gap stock, which was not sold at a loss or a profit. It was just like that perfect, almost break even with what I was buying it at. So I put $9,000 down, 10% on a $90,000 duplex. I lived in the ugly unit, and I rented out the nice one downstairs. And she paid $600. My mortgage was like $683, $38. I couldn't remember. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But where could I live for $38? Or it was $738. That's it. I remember right now. And I'm like, where can I live for $138? And that was why I did that. And I have zero regrets selling my Gap stock. So I started with less than 10,000.
By similar numbers, well, how old were you, Tom?
I was 21.
Oh, okay. So you're younger than us. I was 22 when I bought my first property. It was actually on my 22nd birthday. And I saved up $9,600, which was a 10% down payment on a $99,600 property that I purchased one bedroom, and I actually turned that one bedroom into a house hack. I a big heavy curtain across the living room, made that quote unquote a second bedroom, and found a tenant, or roommate friend that rented it out and covered the majority of my mortgage. So we all got started with 10% down and about $10,000, and we covered earlier that there's ways to buy it with zero down, or 3.5% down. And I'm always a proponent, put as little money as possible into every deal. All right. Well, guys, I think that does it for this week. We talked short-term rentals, long-term rentals. Thanks for following. Follow all of us across multiple social medias. Lauren at Adulting is Easy. Tom Brickman at The Frugal Gay 11. I'm Alan Corey at Real Estate Maxi. And we will do this at this time every Thursday, 12 Eastern. And bring your questions. And we all love talking real estate. And we do this every day. And we just decided to start recording it and live streaming our real estate conversations. And happy that you've joined us. Anything else you guys want to add?
Yep, that's good.
You summed it up perfect. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.